What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we're going to be taking it to another arc build for y'all with the Fallen Sunstar Exotic Helm for our Warlock, allowing us to use all of those ionic traces to our advantage to spam even more of our arc abilities. Definitely one of my favorite exotics for the arc subclass and Warlock here, so we're going to get right into it first with the actual perk on the exotic helmet, which is called Ionic Conductor. So ionic traces you create move faster and grant additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an ionic trace. So with this build, not only are you being able to spam your abilities with our grenade, rift, as well as our melee, but all of your other guardians, whether it be a raid with the 5 other guardians or just a normal activity with the 2 other guardians, you're still helping out your fellow guardians no matter what. So making this a little bit of a support build, but we are building this out heavily for that arc synergy as well as the ability spam. So for the stats that we are going into before we get into the mods, first off, we're going to have resilience at 100 and recovery at 100. Resilience at 100 is because we need it to stay alive in the end game content easily for PvE. Every single subclass should try to have resilience at least at 80, if not all the way up to at 100. Now recovery, obviously for Warlock, is how we use our rift, which is super important on this build, since we are also using the arc souls, which count as arc abilities. You will see why with that arc synergy and feedback when we talk about the subclass, but that would be the second one I go into, with discipline being the third, so we can spam that grenade as much as possible since we're using the pulse grenade. Definitely very good for the ad clear potential, and when we throw on some fragments, we can also get it to juice that jolt for some damage and even additional ad clear. Now, onto the mods for this build. We're going to be using Special Ammo Finder because I am personally using the Forbearance as my energy weapon for that arc synergy. Jolt explosions, absolutely one of my favorite. I know we got the new Waveframe arc grenade launcher this season, but I still love the trusty dusty Forbearance. We're going to be using Harmonic and Kinetic Siphon on these so we can get even more orbs of power on this build with all of our weapons. Now, to be able to spam our abilities even a little bit more, causing damage with a powered melee is going to give us our grenade back a little bit faster, as well as double bolstering. So when we cause damage with our grenade, we're going to get our class ability back a little bit faster. So these just help us to spam our rift so we can get arc souls, as well as using the grenade as much as possible. Now for the mods on my chest piece, for me, I went with harmonic reserves for both my grenade launchers in my heavy and energy slot, as well as resistance. Totally up to you, whatever activity you are going into. You could even double up on something like a double solar if you're going into something hot and heavy with a bunch of scorched cannons, even some of those tracer shanks at you that shoot those nice big old balls of fire. So definitely totally up to you for the chest piece. Now when we move on to the arc boots, right here we are using arc weapon surge with a time dilation on our class item. So all of our weapons with our forbearance as well as our heavy grenade launcher is going to do a little bit more damage because of these, up to 17% when we have that armor charge with double bomber. So when we do throw down our rift, we're able to get our grenade back, so it plays back into impact bolstering detonation with bomber into the ionic traces to just spam our abilities. Now, when we move on to the weapons for this build, like I was talking about, the trusty dusty Forbearance right here with Ambitious Assassin Chain Reaction, so we can get that nice clear of ads with the chain reaction, all of the orbs of power that we're creating on our helmet, as well as just the synergy of what you will see in our aspects and fragments. We're using the Wendigo right here, which is arc for that adept big ones, explosive light with the arc weapon surge. These will both juice some damage. Now on top of that, we're going to be using the bad juju one because it is our overload for our pulse rifle down here, as well as kills return a magazine to being full basically, as well as increases damage and grants us super energy. So we're able to get our chaos reach with this, plus that little extra explosion that we get with the Undying Curse extends the duration of that with the String of Curses. There is a little explosion that is caused by it that is actually arc, perk on it, so it has the addition to create ionic traces by itself, which you will see why in a second. For this build, we aren't really using much on our artifact, basically only Overload Pulse Rifle, and then if you are going into that endgame content by yourself, could be using that Solo Operative to give yourself just a little bit more damage. Moving on to the subclass, which really brings this build together with our aspects and fragments. We're going to be using Chaos Reach for that ability to jolt targets, using that for overload, as well as it is very good for damage on those bosses. Healing Rift on this for the end game content, staying alive. Strafe Glide with me, I personally like Ball Lightning better than Chain Lightning, just has a little bit more range, especially with the buff it got in its last little change. Plus, while amplified, it releases a detonating lightning charge, so we get amplified with this build instantly because of all the ionic traces that we're getting. Pulse Grenade, like I said earlier, definitely one of the best for the PvE realm on all of those arc subclasses. Now, really what brings this build together is our 2 aspects as well as our 4 fragments. So first off, we got those arc souls. Like I said, casting our rift creates arc souls that fire at the target in front of you. Allies can pass through the rift and also get arc souls. Your rift charges faster when allies are near, plus while amplified, our arc souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. Now that is important because on our other electrostatic mind here for aspects, we have defeating targets with arc abilities or jolted or blinding targets create ionic traces. Collecting ionic traces makes us amplified. So tying in with the helmet, giving us not just abilities back, we are getting the ability to become amplified with these, which our arc souls over here count as arc abilities. So with all of our abilities right here in melee as well as grenade, plus those arc souls, we're going to be able to create ionic traces and jolting targets. You will see we will have that pretty easily. Additionally, able to create even more ionic traces. Now on top of that, to help us, our arc weapon final blows have chances to create even more ionic traces, so you can see why this build is how it is because of our Fallen Sunstar helmet, able to use those ionic traces to spam our abilities. Next, defeating jolted targets creates ionic traces, which is super easy for us because we have the arc grenade creating the jolts on those targets. So that applies for everything that we're getting over here with electrostatic mine on those jolted targets creating ionic traces. Plus right here on top of that, it'll create even more of those, so you can see why we're getting everything back super quick with this build. Last but certainly not least, I went with a Spark of Feedback. Taking melee damage briefly increases your outgoing melee damage. Nothing too crazy about this, but it does help with our Ball Lightning, and with this build, I like to be up close and personal with that grenade launcher aspect. Plus, it just feels right being up in there. With the Rift, you can stay alive, throw that down, spread the love of giving arc souls to your teammates. Plus, when you collect all of those ionic traces, like I said earlier, you're getting your abilities back, plus your teammates are getting your abilities back. And on top of that, we are just ad clearing like a menace with this build with the damage of Chaos Reach. So it is a gnarly combination of ad clear plus damage, with definitely being a very good solo build, but it also adds that support of giving your fellow allies some of those little buffs to ability regen, etc. And we get back our rift faster when allies are closer, so it is a match made in heaven. So hopefully you guys like this build. A little off meta this season since Solar and Strand has been so upfront and forward. Hopefully we get a nice little arc stasis season next season, or at least some little changes, because they definitely need some love for sure compared to the other subclasses. But again, I appreciate all you guys for coming back to this channel and checking it out. Like always, supporting the content, whether it be Destiny or Palworld. We are killing both of that. So again, truly appreciate all you guys. If you guys haven't subscribed or liked the video, feel free to. Don't have to. It does help out the channel so you guys don't miss out on any of this stuff. You can also hit that bell so you get the notifications when I post, and that would be also greatly appreciated, but no necessary needs. Again, appreciate all you guys. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.